So there is one thing they don't tell you about in church, and it is the very thing why the church is falling and our nations are falling. They have taken out some books from the Bible which were included in the original King James. And why did they do that? These books are the gap between the Old and the New Testament. Why did they take them out? They took them out because they tell us the history of what happened in the centuries before Christ came. The church doesn't tell you that Judaism in the first century was no longer the Hebrewic faith that the Israelites had. It was a mixture of Babylonian teachings mixed with Moses. What they also don't tell you is that Canaanites and Edomites were converted into this Babylonian Judaism. Right? It was no longer an exclusive Israelite faith. The church teaches you that until the point that Jesus came, the Israelites still were faithful to Moses. And it is the biggest lie. Yes, there were some true Israelites who stayed faithful to Moses. They were righteous. But most of the people in Judah were not even Israelites. They were Canaanites and Edomites. Now those bad leaders of Israel, those Pharisees, many of them were also Edomites, just like King Herod was an Edomite. Right? Jesus told those Pharisees, you make proselytes wherever you go, and they become even twice the sons of hell than you are. Those Edomites, Canaanites were the sons of hell. They were not of Abraham according to the promise. Yes, they claimed the father was Abraham because they came from Esau. But the true Israelites were of the sheep of Jesus. That's why Jesus said, there are sheep here that are not of my fold. The church teaches you that simply means that people didn't believe, therefore they were not of his sheep. No, Jesus meant exactly what he said. There were people there who were not of his flock. So the best kept secret in churchianity is that Satan is a red being with a pitchfork, while they don't teach you that Satan is just a name for the adversary as a group. And these adversaries are still around. They carry their own interpretations, their Babylonian interpretations, and brought it into our nations. So the best kept secret is that there are two groups of people, true Israelites, the ones who Jesus came for, and Canaanites, Edomites, who pose as Israel. So because this is kept secret, the church worships Edomites and Canaanites because they think they are the true Israel. So that's the reason that many books of the Apocrypha are excluded, because they tell you the history that not all the people in Judah when Jesus came were even of Israel. They were not of the sheep of Jesus, right? And when the Canaanite woman was humble enough to understand who Jesus was, Jesus blessed her by healing her daughter. But he told her also, I did not come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right? And these lost sheep, they were somewhere. The church teaches you that they dissolved in history, or that they went back to Palestine in 1948. Now Jesus came to reconcile the lost sheep. And that's what the ministry of Paul was all about. Paul told the people in Europe that your forefathers came out of Egypt, were all baptized in Moses, were all under the cloud. Paul went to Europe to tell them they were reconciled. So the teaching of Jew and Gentile is unbiblical. The true teaching is to the Judahite first, those left in Judah, the true Israelites in Judah, who still kept the law, and the lost tribes who no longer had the law. They were called ethnos, Greeks, nations. What nations was Paul talking about? The nations where the lost tribes were. Now there is no more difference between a Judahite who kept the law, boasted about the law, and the lost tribes who no longer had the law. The difference between circumcision and uncircumcision. Right? So we have to realize that most churches who are Zionist, in the very essence, they work together with Babylon. That's the reason our nation is falling. That's why we all accept Babylonian teachings. And that's why when Jesus returns, he said, will I find faith? Will I find faith? Or are you still worshipping Canaanite people who say they are Judahites, but are not, but are synagogue of Satan?